Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Knoll, and welcome back once again to the movie Battleground. And this is an exciting match because after an initial 16 matches, beginning the tournament and going through 14 matches, we have reached the final match of the opening round of our tournament. And this is certainly an interesting one because the setup for this particular matchup, and by that I mean the literal positioning that this match has on the bracket, has been, for lack of a better term, through nobody else's fault, an absolute nightmare. This match originally began as Hunter Chambliss versus Jacob Barber for their own respective reasons. They had to step away. Then we brought in replacements. Some stuff happened there. One of them had to step away. We did a question playoff between Austin Howell and Shannon Briggs, who were the only two competitors from those first 14 matches to go to the blind round and lose. No, every other match ended in a win or a knockout. No blind rounds. Austin won the one question playoff, so he was set to play the other competitor, Linus Babcock. But because of all the delays and issues in the lead up to it, we had passed a previously established window that Linus had to record the match. There was a certain point where he would be incredibly unavailable, and we had hit that threshold, and thus he also had to drop. The plan is to have him come back in the new year and make his debut outside of the tournament, but unfortunately he could no longer do it with us in the tournament. And so we were kind of left in this predicament of what to do with this match. And so to start it off, I am going to introduce the first opponent of tonight's match, entering with a record of 1 win, 1 defeat, winning the second chance playoff after getting a win against Jacob Barber and a loss against Chadwick Webb. He is Austin Pez Howell. Austin, how are you doing tonight, sir?
No matter how many times you try to get rid of me, Aaron Knoll, I'm here. Welcome myself back to the battleground.
You do what you will. Yes, you are back because whether or not I like it statistically, you did better than the rest and you deserve that shot and you won fair and square against Shannon, so I can't dock you for that. You are here tonight. Obviously, your original opponent was supposed to be Linus, and we had a bit of a snafu in kind of getting things set up there. We passed a recording threshold and things kind of became difficult to make happen. And so for fun, I want your thoughts. What do you think is going to happen tonight?
Oh, I hope I'm fighting you. Am I fighting you tonight, Aaron? Because that would be my dream come true. Like, please tell me I'm doing that, and we're gonna finally play here in the battleground. Is that what's happening tonight with this mystery opponent? You're gonna flip it and bring out my buddy Matt Beer, and you're gonna fight me?
No, but I'm glad you brought that scenario up because, see, a couple of weeks ago, you tried to get real smart with me and you thought, oh, I'm mad because I got eliminated. So I can do this and flip that and hit up a guy who on the right day will say yes to anything. And I'm going to make Aaron play in his own tournament. And you thought you were real smart. So you know what? You have your second chance. You met the criteria. You won the playoff. Your opponent, Shannon, hit two different criteria as to why he qualified. Not only was he one of the only competitor who went to the blind round, but he was one of two competitors who had their opponent, for reasons outside of his control, flipped at the last minute, and he then lost to Abel DeLu. And so when I was looking at the scenarios of who could come into this match, I realized there was one other competitor who had his player flipped at the last second, who would be dying for a second chance to get back into this, and one who I personally think can give you the most hell. So for payback, Austin, your opponent tonight entering with a record of 1 win, 1 defeat, and 1 knockout. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a second chance in the tournament, Henry Confidential Sanchez.
Yes, and that is exactly the case. So, quick backstory. Yes, you should do your clapping. Quick backstory for my situation, in case you are not familiar with watching. I won my first match by knockout, potentially the first one. Recording dates, you never know. With that said, but
you were the first.
Yes,
you can have that.
But my next matchup was going to be against Grant Gregory. We had some good questions. I had over a month to prep. I had a lot ready I had a lot in the chamber for that one. I was excited. I was ready. Unfortunately, he couldn't show up. So last minute, we not only switched the questions, but I got a new opponent. I wasn't the biggest fan of the questions. It is what it is. But given after having a month of the last ones and not liking these as much and not really, wanting to prep as hard as I did for the first time in my match against Jay, against my opinion, where I think I won, some people think it at least should have been a tie and going to a blind round, but I lost 3-1. So I'm really angry about that. We have a new one. We have some new questions, and I am out for blood. So, Austin, I might like you off the battleground, but here, it's going to be war.
Hey, listen, man. As one of your Saw things says famously in his tagline, now that I know it's you, there will be blood. There will be blood. And we are gonna go for first blood here. It's a first blood match, Hell in a Cell, Rage in the Cage, whatever the hell you want to call this. I'm happy to have you as my opponent. You know why? Because I like you, Henry. I like your style. I like the way you go for blood. You think you won all the time? Well, damn it, I won all my matches. I'm undefeated too. Just so you know, me and you, this is undefeated. So the first real loss will be here. I'll tell you that right now, because I also think you won that match. Just to be fair, before we rip each other's heads off.
Exactly. So in our hearts, this will be our first loss on unofficial record. So one of us is going down. We're going to be going down fighting. So get your popcorn, folks.
Whatever makes you feel better about yourselves, guys. Movie Battleground is a best of 5 rounds. It is the first to 3 points wins the match. Each round of debate is worth 1 point. If a competitor happens to get 3 points in a row, that is a victory by knockout. If it is a 2-2 tie at the end of the 4 rounds, we will go to the blind round, although we'll get to that when we get there, if we get there. In terms of the first 4 rounds, these are questions the competitors were given ahead of time. They were given plenty of time to prep and think about what they wanted to do. Coming into this, stage 1, 60-second opening to explain and establish their argument, followed by a 2-minute solo pitch. Stage 3 will be a 4-minute open debate to have a back and forth go at each other. And finally, 1 minute to close it out. At the end of that, I do have 3 judges backstage in Haven, Will, and Sean. They will come on screen and make the decision as to who gets the point for the round. With that said, gentlemen, do you guys have any questions?
No, let's do this.
Do it.
All right. So, up first, we're getting straight into it, and it's interesting that you say blood is on the table, apparently, because the question is, what is the best action film of the 2000s? We gave you a 10-year period between 2000 and 2009, and you had to pick the best film in that period. So, going into this match, even though everything else thus far has been done by positional ranking, we're not using records until we get to the semifinals to determine favorite and least favorite. Because you were both kind of weird last-minute entrants and your place on the bracket is completely obligatory by how I input you, I am going to use records. And since Henry does have a knockout, I have the joy of putting Austin on the bottom. Henry, as the favorite, you chose to go first on questions 2 and 4, which means, Austin, you will go first on question 1, and I will go ahead and bring in your timer, and it will start ticking when you begin speaking.
You know what you are, what you're made of. War is in your blood. Don't fight it. You didn't kill for your country. You killed for yourself. The gods ain't never going to make that go away. Because when you're pushed, killing's as easy as breathing. My pick for the best action film of the 2000s is 2008's Rambo, directed by and starring Sylvester Stallone in the role that he is most known for, in my opinion, as far as the action genre goes. He followed up Rocky Balboa in 2006 with another successful return of one of his biggest characters in his history. What he's known for action-wise, Rambo. And I'll cede my time till we go to the arguments and throw it over to Henry.
All right. As the timer winds down, Henry, you can start speaking. The timer will tick when you do.
So when the question came onto the table, I was actually surprised when I saw my opponent's answer, because I had to double check and make sure that this wasn't the worst action movie of the 2000s. Because when you get the real answer for the best action movie of the 2000s, that is Kill Bill Volume 1. And the reason that this movie is the best action movie of the 2000s is because it is an action movie from start to finish. There are various scenes that I'll get into specifics later on where you continuously have fantastic choreographed and amazing and memorable action sequences. You have an amazing lead character in The Bride, Beatrix Kiddo, which we find out later, and that is super memorable because this one is the first in a quote unquote franchise, a two-part series. So the fact that we have a fantastic, memorable character from the first installment of a movie showcases why that this is a fantastic action movie, and in fact, the number one action movie of the 2000s, Kill Bill Volume 1.
All right, we're going to move to the 2-minute segment. Austin, your time starts when you begin speaking.
When you think about the term action and the genre of action films, you have an expectation, a first thing that pops into your head, something like a Schwarzenegger, something like a Stallone, something like a Van Damme. And there's a reason you think about those guys, because they're iconic. So when you hear that Stallone is coming out with a new Rambo movie in 2008, 20 years after Rambo 3, you have an expectation, and your expectations are high. Not only does Stallone meet expectations in this movie, but he also exceeds them, because 20 years after Rambo 3, we catch up with Rambo in Burma, and we see what he's been going on, living a recluse life, being the reluctant hero that he is, helping out these missionaries who have to go into Burma and who are giving assistance to, and basically the movie is based on real circumstances. My parents went to a church where they had the Karen people who were in real life oppressed by the Burmese, Myanmar, or whatever you like to call the country, military over there. And he based this movie on real circumstances and just with fictional characters, as most people do. And he gives you realistic action, over the top action, but realistic action at the same time. And it's a slow buildup of that action. You get to see Rambo in the early movies, seeing that he still has the edge, seeing he still has that killer instinct. You get to see these villages getting raided by a absolutely despicable villain who you want to see get slaughtered and get gutted at the end of the movie. You have soldiers who you want to see get slaughtered at the end of the movie. You get guerrilla style action, Rambo action that you expect. Rambo going around with a machete in the rain at dark, slitting dudes' throats. And then you get the absolute full-on bonkers action you expect from a Rambo 2, where he is blowing shit up and tearing bodies in half with a gun. And it's exactly what you expect. You get exactly what you want. It's funny that my opponent should say Kill Bill Volume 2 is nonstop action when you start with a 2-minute fight scene in a kitchen and go literally over an hour before you get any other kind of action at the Blue Leaf Club whatsoever. If you want to see dudes actually giving some action for a vast majority of the film, you watch mine. If you want to watch a lady sit in a car and wiggle her toes for 10 minutes and spout off about Hattori Hanzo swords, you get to watch my opponent's movie and watch your clock waiting for action to actually happen.
And time. Henry, back to you.
So I like that my opponent brought up iconic action genre heroes such as Jean-Claude Van Damme and Arnold Schwarzenegger and even Sylvester Stallone himself, because when you think of those movies that those people were in, were fun action movies, and that is exactly the opposite of what Rambo 2008 is. It is devoid of all fun. It is just a bunch of senseless explosions and blowing people up and a lot of gratuitous violence that really just doesn't even give you the satisfaction of the deaths of the people, because other than the fact that they are the villain in the sense of like, yeah, they're doing evil stuff, you don't care about why we're killing them other than the fact that they're just pure evil. And at the end of the day, for these types of movies, you either want it to be fun action, like you said, over the top craziness, or you want to have the heart and the emotion because you really want to connect to it. There's a lot of mercenaries in this movie that you don't remember. When you think of like an Arnold movie, you think of in Predator, all the characters and the side characters. You don't just think of Arnold Schwarzenegger. You think of Jesse the Body Ventura, Shane Black's character. You think of those guys and the quips and the humor. This is devoid of any humor. Kill Bill Volume 1 doesn't just have an opening action sequence. It has at least 5 memorable sequences that you can think of for the entire thing. You have the opening scene with the bride and Vernita Green. You have the backstory of Gogo or Oren Ishii. You have the Crazy 88 fight, and you have the 1v1 with Beatrix and Oren Ishii at the very end. So no matter what, when you ask someone about Kill Bill Volume 1, they're likely to point out multiple action scenes from this in their memory because there's so much going on. And yes, there's a lot of, emotional character building arc, but that's why you care about the action in the scene. When you have someone dying in this movie, it is not just blood splurting everywhere. There's actually some emotion attached to it on top of the fact that there is some crazy action. Unlike in Rambo, where you just have some white people coming to save it, and at the end of the day, they're not really doing a good job of it because they get kidnapped, and then it just becomes a damsel in distress movie of a character that Rambo, he doesn't even know the girl that well. He's only known her for a couple minutes. She gets kidnapped. All of a sudden, I got to go save the day. You don't really have that connection to it. It's just a bunch of mindless explosions and action that is very forgettable after you turn the movie off. Kill Bill Volume 1 is a classic and is the best.
And time. All right, we have the 4-minute open debate. Time starts when someone speaks.
Your boy Tarantino is not known for action scenes. 20 years later, he's still not known for action scenes. So to pick a Tarantino movie for an action film is not what I think of. Yes, I think of extreme violence, but I just don't think of action when I think of Tarantino and Kill Bill Volume 1, other than the House of the Blue Daggers stuff is not filled with action, man. Like mine is start to finish Rambo. It's what you expect out of a Rambo movie.
So you have a 90-minute film that has a couple of explosions and some shooting, but it's not jam-packed with action. It's a lot of mercenary stuff when you're going to go save a damsel in distress, and because you don't care about that damsel, it's not really that interesting. Whereas in mine, there's a lot of 1v1 with the bride and Vernita Green. You have, like I said, the backstory of Oren Ishii, and then you actually have the whole entire Crazy 88 sequence.
That depends on if you like anime sequences or not, if you like chop sake movies or not, if you like kung fu movies. The one you pick is a very specific subset of action that had better movies with that same type of action around the same time. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, House of the Flying Daggers, the original Matrix, which your choreographers, which Tarantino had to source out for his action scenes, and the movie Hero. There's plenty of movies around that same time where if you want to get full bore, a full movie about that, I can go to those movies instead.
Yeah, but like you said, you just brought up a bunch of movies. But if I'm sitting people down and I'm like, here's some action movies that you can watch, people are gonna pick Kill Bill Volume 1. If I'm setting you down with Die Hard and Predator and other movies that your movie's trying to rip off, or even any of the other Rambo movies.
How is it a rip off when it's a continuation of that same series? I don't understand how it's a rip off when it's literally a continuation of those movies.
It's a rip off of like Predator, where it's doing the exact same thing with the mercenaries, but a lot less interesting. It's devoid of any type of fun. And I
didn't know he was fighting an alien in that movie, but okay. I didn't know he was fighting aliens. I think he's fighting actually real people.
You have a lot of characters and a lot of fun. In this one, you don't know anything about them. All you know, it's just some crazy people that are doing some crazy things. But you didn't set up the world. You just set it up as evil, but you didn't set up any individual characters. That's
what an action movie is, and a hero fighting evil. That's what all those 80s movies are, is you going back to fighting. He's going in to lead. The motto of those movies is leave no man behind. He goes in, he feels responsible for these people he dropped off, and he leaves nobody behind. When he hears they've been kidnapped and there's atrocities going on, he goes in, he has a responsibility. It's where the monologue comes in, that he has a responsibility to go in and save the day like a great action hero. Your hero, we're not even fully with, because the first scene she goes in to kill this person and she's literally killing her in front of her 4-year-old child, and you don't know if you're going to be fully with her or not.
That's false information right there, because the child doesn't show up until the end of the scene, and at that point they were going to be respectable and they were going to set it up to do a battle at night. But then Vernita Green, she snakes, no pun intended, and she was going to try and kill her. So Beatrix, kill or be killed. That was the scenario. And then she had the respectability to tell her, when you grow up, if you want to meet me and you want to settle this, you can do it, because she is an honorable action hero, because she's not only just doing amazing stunts and choreography with a sword, but also with fighting and other stuff that we see throughout the entire film. But there's also emotional characters. In yours, you have the mercenaries, like I said, rip off Predator, but do it in a worse way, because you don't care about any of them. You have the one guy with this cocky accent, but he's just talking shit and he's not even funny.
It's Graham McTavish, who would go on to be in the Hobbit movies. He went on to become a really fun character actor who you recognize later on. He absolutely stands out, and he's brash and he's great. Your movie, you talk about unrealistic action. Yours, it goes to this thing where they get their arms chopped off and you get the geysers and geysers and geysers of blood all over the place. You talk about cartoon action, that's cartoon action right there. Mine's actually realistic. When people get hit with bullets, they bleed. When people get their heads chopped off, they bleed, but realistically, when people get hit with a 50 caliber, that's exactly what's going to happen. It's realistic action in a realistic world with a realistic hero who's doing what he needs to do to survive and to get revenge on these people who are pure evil, which is what action movies are all about.
And like I said, mine is a revenge story specifically because it is the bride trying to get revenge on Bill. And I just want to get a couple stats out there. My movie has an 85% Rotten Tomato critic score and 81 audience score. Yours has a 37 critic score and only a 69 audience score. So no matter what, the people just consensus say that mine's better. My movie also made $180 million on a $30 million budget.
Your people who are seeing your movie are going for dialogue and Tarantino style, dialogue and things like. They're not going for action movie scenes. That's not what they're going for.
And time. All right, we have 2 1-minute closings left. Austin, you are up first.
Kill Bill Volume 1 is 2 hours of Tarantino jerking off to Kung Fu and Chop Sake films and doing his so-called tribute to what they are, which if that means you want to wait literally an hour and 25 minutes until something actually happens, you can go ahead and watch Kill Bill Volume 1, because when I want to go see an action movie, when I think of the best action movie of the 2000s, my mind does not go to Tarantino and never has when it comes to action movies. I want to go to something reliable. When I want to go to something over the top, yes, that's what I want to see when I want to see action. I want to see bodies blowing up. I want to see Stallone hunting around and going and taking out the bad guy with a machete and gutting his ass from head to toe. That's what I want to see. Movies around this time had become stale and tame, PG-13, Bond movies and Bourne movies, and we wanted to see a throwback to what made action movies great and silly and over the top in the 80s and 90s. That's what we wanted, and Stallone knew exactly that. He didn't take. My movie is 90 minutes. It's pure action, start to finish. It's not 2 hours of somebody getting raped on a bed and wiggling her toes and coming back to life and with geysers of blood.
And time. All right, Henry, final minute on the clock for you.
All right, so I want to finish up with the one thing I was talking about, the stats-wise. So you say that people go to see these movies for Quentin dialogue and stuff, but that would be the case if the movie before Jackie Brown didn't only make $39 million, which would make zero sense that it would make that low when it came right after Pulp Fiction, where it had the most hype. So the fact that this one made $180 million because people went to go see, word of mouth, and they really wanted to go revisit it because of the amazing action. You have a revenge film, like I said. It doesn't just have a couple action scenes. You have the opening thing with Vernita Green. You have the scene with the Buck, like you said, the rape stuff, but she does some action there. You have the Oren Ishii backstory. You have the crazy 88 fight, and you have the bride versus Oren at the end. You have a minimum 5 action sequences in a 2-hour movie, but you also have a lot of character. In your movie, it's 90 minutes, but there's a lot of slowness to it, but there's also no character development. You don't care about anybody. You have a lot of just crazy action that, sure, you may think it's cool in the moment, but you're going to forget about it tomorrow. My movie is cool in the moment, and you're going to remember it of all time, and that's why it is the best action movie of the 2000s, because it's memorable, and it transcends a Tarantino movie because it is an amazing action movie, not just a Tarantino movie.
All right, and that'll be time on the round. I'm going to go ahead and send both of you guys to the back as I go ahead and bring in our 3 judges. All right, guys, welcome in, and let's go ahead and get into this. Haven, I go to you first. As concise as you can get it for me. Who gets your vote and what sold you?
Yeah, they both. I like the battle, what they were doing, going back and forth. But I'm gonna edge this out with the one person that edged it out for me was Austin. I got to give it to him. He mentioned the writer director, which was Sylvester Stallone. Good point. Just the action, pure base. He was nailing Henry on the head when he was saying the style of movie that Kill Bill was. Bringing up other movies kind of similar to Kill Bill. Mentioning the PG-13 era. And then why Sylvester Stallone brought Rambo back. He mentioned that it was a continuation, that it wasn't a reboot, like Henry said. So, yeah, for all the stuff, I'm going to give it to Austin this round for me.
All right. So first vote goes to Austin. Will, I go to you next. Who gets your vote and what sold you?
All right. So my vote went for Henry just because, everything that Austin was able to say against Kill Bill, Henry was not only able to counter it very expertly, but the reason, he was able to, I feel, argue for Kill Bill a lot better than Austin was.
All right. So I'll go then on to Sean. Who gets your vote, the tiebreaker, and what was the main thing that sold you?
For me, it was about specifics. One person talked more about the general action in his film and the story. Another person kept pulling out specific action scenes from his movie. So I'm going to go with Henry.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and send you guys to the back and bring in our competitors as the first round is over, and we will move on to round number 2. And in round number 2, as we learned earlier this year, the long-standing, actually previously referenced Rocky franchise by Sylvester Stallone is a thing that is not yet dead. Obviously, earlier this year, we had the special screening that happened, the recut of Rocky 4 through Fathom Events, and we've also since learned that Creed 3 will be coming up, hopefully, if all goes to plan, by November of next year, with actor Michael B. Jordan in the director's chair. And recently, since Rocky Balboa, which was done by Stallone, the franchise has created a knack of bringing new talent in to direct. Obviously, Ryan Coogler for Creed, then Stephen Caple Jr. for 2, and now B. Jordan for 3. And so I have phrased the question to these gentlemen: which director who's never made a Rocky or Creed film should direct one? Now, with that said, the one thing I did tell these guys is the approach to the film that they are taking could be done in any way, meaning it doesn't necessarily have to be Creed 3 or Creed 4 in that sense, since we already know B. Jordan is doing Creed 3. As long as it's a Rocky film, whatever details they choose to bring is good enough, and it's focused on why the director should do it. With that said, though, Henry, you have chosen to go first on this one, so I'll bring up your timer, and it will start once you begin speaking.
So I want to preface this by saying we don't know the plot or what Creed 3 is, so some of what I'm going to pitch is speculation based on what Creed 3 could be. And I'm pitching a new installment in the Rocky franchise, and it is going to be directed by Gavin O'Connor, because when you think of the Rocky franchise, you think of obviously boxing, but you also think of character development, and you think of family and love. And Gavin O'Connor has proven within his filmography, specifically in the sports realm, that he's capable of covering all subgenres that you see within the Rocky franchise. In Miracle, you have the coach and the team, and you have just the expertise within that field. In Warrior, you have the family dynamic of the two brothers. And in The Way Back, you have the old, washed-up veteran who's trying to, similar to Miracle, be the coach, but also kind of just make a comeback and be a decent person. Gavin O'Connor will be capable of doing that within the Rocky franchise, because I will pitch specifically, but it is going to involve family, and it is going to involve the actual sense of boxing. And, you know, speaking of boxing, Gavin O'Connor proved in Warrior that he can actually film and direct fighting sequences, because MMA is not directly boxing, but it is similar in how you want to see it on camera. So, Gavin O'Connor.
All right, that's time. Austin, back to you for your opening.
To me, when I think about a Rocky movie, I want to take it back to what Rocky originally started as, which is a character piece, a character study of this character of Rocky Balboa. And instead of going forward in time, I want to go backwards in time. I want to do a prequel called Stallion, and I'm going to pitch that movie here in a few minutes. And who am I going to pitch it with? Well, I'm going to pitch it with a guy who often gets underlooked when we talk about one of the great directors working in Hollywood, a man who has brought home gold both on television and in film multiple times, many times, in all types of genres: sci-fi, action, character pieces, period dramas, fantasy, and that man is Ron Howard. And I want Ron Howard to direct a prequel called Stallion, and I'll get more into the arguments, but when he does sports movies, it's fantastic. When he does smaller character dramas, it's fantastic. He can do action. He can literally do it all. And like I said, what I'm going to do in my argument is I want to pitch something that Stallone himself once done, and that is a Rocky prequel set in the 60s called Stallion, and I'm going to pitch that here in just a moment.
All right. Henry, back to you for 2 minutes.
So, like what I touched on earlier with Gavin O'Connor, he's capable of having a story that showcases the mentor, the family aspect, and the concept of being washed. And so I have Gavin O'Connor pitching or directing the brand new movie, which is going to focus on Roberts, his Rocky's son, because like I said, we don't know exactly what's going to happen in Creed 3, but Rocky Balboa has passed on. He's gone, and Robert, he is dealing with the passing of his father, Rocky Balboa, which up to this point he never desired to be a boxer. You know, you saw in Rocky 5, he just wanted the attention of his father. In Rocky Balboa, their relationship kind of, you know, has its ups and downs. The amazing speech between the two, there's a little bit there, but you don't have that. But luckily, at the end of Creed 2, Rocky comes to visit, and he meets his grandson Logan. And that is exactly what I want to cover on this. We're going into the future a little bit, where Robert, he is going to be the coach, the manager, the mentor to his son Logan, who has picked up natural abilities to box. And Logan is going to take care of the new legacy in the Rocky franchise. And unfortunately, we can't call the movie Logan because that's already out there. So we are just going to go to the basics. Creed started off its franchise with Creed. Logan is going to cover his new trilogy, or however you want to go. It's starting with at least one with just Balboa, because that is the name that we know. That is the name we have. It's going to pique the interest of the fans because, ooh, a new Rocky movie. Oh, it's a continuation, but you still have, you know, that legacy of what we're doing, because, you know, just like in Creed, or the opposite of Creed, where Adoniston, he didn't want to use the name to get ahead. Robert and Logan, they are proud of the Balboa name, and they are going to stick with that going into this new movie. So Balboa, starring Milo Ventimiglia and, you know, Logan, the son, and it is going to be a family dynamic between the two, and the struggles that they have of, you know, living up to the Balboa legacy, but also the expectations of how this young man is a specimen, and how he's going to do a great job in the fighting world. So Logan. Well, Balboa, starring Logan, the grandson.
Starring Hugh Jackman as Logan. No, judges, don't take that for real. Austin, I head back to you. Time starts when you begin speaking.
So I don't want to keep going ahead in the timeline. We've gone enough ahead. We've had Rocky in his older age. We've had Rocky talking to his son. We've had enough about Rocky himself in the future. We've already done the kind of son or grandson, whatever you want to call it, the spawn of one of these people with Creed. We're having 3 movies of that, essentially. So I want to wind the clock back. Let's go to a period piece. Let's go back to when Rocky, literally the original Rocky 1, was an Oscar film. It had 11 Oscar nominations. Let's get back to Oscar prestige with something like Rocky. And who better to do it than Ron Howard, a guy who knows a lot about Oscars and knows a lot about Emmys and whatever you want, gold all over the place. A guy who knows about period pieces, a guy who knows boxing with Cinderella Man, who did a great job standing out even with a boxing film in the age of Rocky and Raging Bull and everything like that. A guy who does a movie like Rush, which has great rivalries. So this Rocky prequel, I want to set it in the 60s, an up-and-coming Rocky, probably like around 1965, maybe a 20-year-old Rocky Balboa. We never have seen Rocky's family or how he grew up, where he, like, growing up in Philly. We've other than a line drop here and there about his dad told him, you know, to use your basically your bronze instead of your brain, so just become a boxer because he can't sing or dance. We've literally we know nothing about Rocky's backstory. We know nothing about him growing up. So I want to get back to a place where we can really explore his family dynamics. We can see where he got his heart. We can look for his love of Rocky Marciano, where he got that, his love of boxing, and him literally getting into boxing. You could have a younger Mickey. You could have, you know, recast Rocky Balboa with a younger actor. This is something that Stallone himself wants to do in the opening Q&A of the Rocky IV director's cut. He wants to go back into the past with Rocky instead of continuing. He feels that that story has been told enough through his movies, and that the Creed story will be told with the conclusion of this trilogy. So I want to bring it back to an Oscar study character piece with a little bit of boxing sprinkled in, much like the original Rocky film did. It wasn't really much of a boxing movie overall. He had the opening fight and the final fight, and a lot of everything else was character study, really exploring the character of Rocky Balboa. That's what I want to get to. It's not always about the fight choreography.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the 4-minute open debate. Time starts when the first person speaks.
So I have a question, and I'm glad that you pitched your story, because it makes my argument a lot easier. So I want to remind the judges that the question is what director should direct, not what is the better pitch, because the director that you chose, Ron Howard. And what is the movie that Ron Howard has done where he touched into a prequel? Oh yeah, Solo, and he ruined that character, a beloved character of all time in
A
Han
movie
Solo.
that wasn't even
ruined
his
it.
that he came in and saved, by the way. That wasn't even
Yeah,
his
but
movie from
but
development, but
he's the
he
one
was brought in to
who
save the
attached it.
film, and he did a great job of saving that film. That wasn't
He did
his
a
movie
terrible
from
job.
start to finish, but that's okay. That's your opinion.
You pitch the concept of like, oh, why did he pick the Italian stallion? Oh, why does he love Rocky Marciano? Well, guess what? Ron Howard's going to ruin those questions. How did Han Solo get his name? Oh, he was just by himself in line. You're gonna get a lot of
that's
questions.
not his movie from start to finish, and we've seen other prequels.
But he's the one that
I want to bring back to prequel stuff like Godfather Part 2, where you can do Hollywood prequels fully developed, and in this movie, it would be his movie from start to finish, not a Lord and Miller project they has to come and overcome. But I feel like you're getting bogged down in that.
That's speculation right there. But what we got from that movie is not good. And you talked about how you want to bring it back to the old schoolness of that story. Well, guess what? He directed a boxing movie, Cinderella Man, and it is long and it is boring, and it also has bad boxing scenes. Where guess what? Gavin O'Connor, he knows how to do character pieces, but he also knows how to do what the Rocky franchise is most popular for. Montages. There's fantastic montage scene in Warrior when they're training back and forth because they use the use of classical music. It really gets you involved in the character stuff, and it's also some great fighting sequences. So it covers everything that you want.
I'm glad you want just another Rocky sequel, but I don't want just another Rocky sequel. I want to do something fresh and original. And your boy Gavin O'Connor, yes, he made the best MMA fighting movie, but what's his competition? Here Comes the Boom. Red belt, never back down. I mean, that's like being the smartest guy in a Down syndrome class, dude. Like, he made the best movie out of a pile of shit. I mean, what's the comparison? I mean, he made Miracle, a movie that was basically already written for him, that won the AARP award for best intergenerational film. Congratulations for him. I want to get back to an Oscar level director, somebody who knows how to bring down the gold and write character pieces like A Beautiful Mind or Frost Nixon, or yes, Cinderella Man, which is more about character than the actual boxing scenes, and that's where you bring in other people to choreograph the boxing.
Well, once again, you're bringing up Cinderella Man because it's the easiest one, and you say it has a lot of character. But like I said, the first hour of that movie is extremely boring, and the relationship between
in your opinion, I mean, the Oscars would disagree, but no one's
talking about that movie today, whereas people are talking about Gavin O'Connor movies today. Like I was about to say, the relationship between Russell Crowe and Renee Zellweger is extremely stale. And a Rocky movie, you want to have that chemistry. You want to have something that leads up, and he does. Russell Crowe has no chemistry with anyone in that movie, even him and Paul Giamatti,
I'm not arguing about Cinderella Man here. I'm just talking about Ron Howard as a director. You're getting bogged down
Ron Howard is at the helm of that.
Okay.
So I'm just giving you two instances where Ron Howard is a bad choice. In Cinderella Man, he does a bad job directing a boxing movie, and in Solo, he did a bad job stepping.
In your opinion.
In a lot of people's opinions. A lot of people are more likely to watch Miracle, which is a fantastic hoorah true story. We're going to watch Warrior, which you just admitted is the best MMA movie, regardless of its competition. You just said it's the best, where no one is saying
it's not hard to be the best when your competition is a pile of shit. Like, it's not that hard to be the best when every other movie that has tackled it has been trash. Like, it's not that hard to stand out when you hire people like Nick Nolte or Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton. I mean, and by the way, the most people talk about when they talk about Warriors, Nick Nolte. I mean, that's a side character, but that's okay.
Exactly.
He does great fight choreography, but like me, I want to bring it back to where it's not all about fight choreography. I want to bring it back to a character piece. I don't want to just have it be another Rocky sequel that has like, it's just about fights. I want to bring it back to character study. Ron Howard can do characters. I've shown that with his filmography. He knows how to get into the hearts of characters.
Exactly, and you're making my argument for me by saying that your movie doesn't have the good action, but also you want the character. But guess what? You just said a lot of people want to talk about Nick Nolte, and I just pitched my movie where Mila Ventimiglia is going to be the mentor, just like Nick Nolte was in the Warrior movie. But you also have the brother relationship, and like I referenced earlier with The Way Back, you have the concept of washed up. And guess what? The Rocky series all talk about washed up, and how you want to have that strive and that comeback and the hoorah moment.
And time. All right, we're gonna have 1 minute closings. Henry, you are up first.
Ladies and gentlemen of the judges, like I said, the question is what director who's never made a Rocky movie should direct one, and my director covers everything that you want in a Rocky franchise. Miracle, it has the great coach and the mentor and the team building aspect. In Warrior, it not only has the father-son aspect, but it also has the brother aspect. Motion, it also has great trainers. It also has great montages. In The Way Back, it has the concept of being washed up, and how it has the concept of alcoholism, which Robert might have in the story. It has the concept of bringing the team together and bringing the mentor. It also has, everything that you want from this movie. Like I said, shooting from a boxing perspective. Ron Howard is the exact opposite of that. He has a boring movie from the boxing perspective. He attempted boxing and he did a terrible job with Cinderella Men. It was long. It was boring. You don't really care about it. The chemistry between Russell Crowe and Renee Zellweger is terrible. At the very end, the hoorah moment that you want from that movie where he actually wins, she's listening to it on the radio and she's not interested at all. He also did Solo when he ruined the IP of that character. You could say about the writing when he came in, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, Ryan Howard was attached and he ruined it. And I don't want him ruining Rocky.
And time. All right. Austin, you have the final minute. Time starts when you speak.
My opponent is pitching a stale, another continuation of the Rocky franchise, which is what we've had already. Bring in the guy who did the MMA movie to do the boxing movie. Yawn, yawn, yawn. Okay, I want to get back to what Rocky started out as. Rocky was not a boxing movie, the original one. It was about the character of Rocky Balboa. That's what the movie why the movie won the Oscars that it did. It didn't win for best action movie of the 70s, best sports movie. It won for best picture, best director, best writing. I want to get back to a guy, Ron Howard, who can bring the gold calibers, the gold standard for character pieces, for period pieces. Like I said, not just that, A Beautiful Mind, Frost Nixon, Apollo 13, In the Heart of the Sea, Cinderella Man, Rush. I mean, the guy, it goes on and on. I want to bring it back to what the core of Rocky is, not just another movie, another sequel with okay fight choreography that's going to get lost in the shuffle. Let's get it back to the prestige of what it was. Let's go back in time instead of going forward. I mean, if you want to get the guy who did the MMA movie, that's fine. The fight scenes are going to look pretty. If you want a great movie that's going to win some Oscars, that's going to get some interest, it's going to bring back the character, you get Ron Howard.
And time. All right, guys. I'm going to go ahead and send both of you to the back and bring in our three judges. All right. And Will, I go to you first, as concise as you can get for me. Who gets your vote and what sold you?
All right. So Henry got my vote this time. While I wasn't crazy about either of their pitches, if I'm being completely honest, Henry focused on why his director was, the best, and really fleshed out his reasons, and he sold me on that.
All right. Sean, I go to you. Who gets your vote and what was the main thing that sold you?
This was a great round. Both competitors really did well battling it out and countering each other. I love the specificity that Henry brought. He pulled aspects from the movies that Gavin directed, relationships and fights and stuff like that, and told us this is why his film would be better.
All right, guys. So thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and send you guys to the back and bring in our competitors once again as we go ahead and move on to question number 3. And as we move into Oscar season, obviously it's not in wide release yet, so not everyone has had a chance to see it, but just based off critic reviews, generally speaking, one of the front runners for the Oscars is the new Paul Thomas Anderson film, Licorice Pizza. Paul Thomas Anderson is somebody who has a history of doing very well at the Oscars, whether it be his collaborations with Daniel Day-Lewis, like Phantom Thread and There Will Be Blood, or something kind of in the middle, like The Master with Philip Seymour Hoffman. He's got a real history of doing well with awards. But even with a director with as few films as him, when the caliber is so high, sometimes a couple go under the radar. Our question is, what is Paul Thomas Anderson's most underrated movie? And with that said, Austin, you are back up and going first on this one, so I will hand it over to you. The timer starts when you begin speaking.
So I'll start with defining underrated as defined by the Oxford Dictionary, not rated or valued highly enough. So that's where I'm going to start with Paul Thomas Anderson. There are many of his movies that are rated very, very highly that deserve it. So I went back to 1999 and his movie Magnolia, which for whatever reason everybody has completely forgotten about and nobody talks about. it's an absolutely epic experience of a film, not just a movie. It is an experience from start to finish, and it's a movie that was nominated for 3 Oscars. It has got a stacked cast: Tom Cruise, Jason Robards right before his death, unfortunately, Julianne Moore, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Philip Baker Hall, Jeremy Blackman, who plays a child in the movie, is fantastic. William H. Macy, John C. Reilly, everybody giving spot on, amazing grand slam performances. It's a movie about life itself, about the chaos of life and how things might seem like they're coming together and how things can take a left turn and fall apart at any time. So one I'm going to talk about, underrated, Magnolia from 1999.
All right, and as the timer wraps up on Austin's 1 minute, Henry, it will start working for you when you speak.
I'm glad my opponent defined underrated, because comparing the 2 movies, the one he picked and the one I picked, mine fits that definition more, and I chose Punch Drunk Love. And the reason that this movie is underrated, because when you think of Punch Drunk Love, you immediately think Adam Sandler. And unfortunately, Adam Sandler has a stigma within the film community of just being goofy, silly, terrible, and not a good actor. But that is the opposite of what we get from Adam Sandler in Punch Drunk Love. He's revered, he's calm, he has his explosions, but based on the script and the story, it's well understood. If you actually look up the definition of Punch Drunk Love, it is the awkwardness and the anxiety-driven love that you get, and kind of like the shyness, and that is exactly what Barry Egan is. He develops a relationship with Emily Watson in this movie because they don't have anyone, and it is beautiful. And once you understand why that their relationship is so beautiful, it reminds you that everyone has someone out there. It gives you hope. And when you think of Paul Thomas Anderson, unfortunately, you don't think of Punch Drunk Love, but you should.
And time. All right, Austin, back to you.
Again, the crux of my argument about underrated is a movie that people have basically forgotten about. Everybody, pretty much when you bring up Adam Sandler, knows Punch Drunk Love, even if you've never seen Punch Drunk Love. Because when you bring up Adam Sandler movies, hey, what's a great Adam Sandler movie? Punch Drunk Love. Even if they haven't seen it, Punch Drunk Love. Everybody knows that. It's perfectly rated because it's a perfectly good movie with a great Adam Sandler performance. My movie, you never see discussions about it. You see no reactions online of these movie reactions. You see no anniversary screenings, no podcasts about it. Literally, I see nothing about Magnolia, and it's criminally so, because it's a movie that, for God's sakes, Tom Cruise was nominated for Best Actor, and for great reason. He's playing this amazing character, Frank Mackey, who's this almost like a Jordan Belfort, just this crazy motivational speaker guy telling people how to get laid. Again, Philip Baker Hall, a character actor, giving his maybe the best performance he's ever given in his career. Jason Robards giving an amazing performance, literally on his deathbed in the movie right before he died in real life. It's a movie about all these intersectional characters kind of coming together, all with the same issues of parental issues or child abuse issues, that you think it's going to come all together, and it kind of goes sideways, especially near the end. The only thing people talk about in my movie with Magnolia is the ending with the raining of the frogs, but that's literally the only thing you hear people talking about this movie whenever it is brought up, which is almost never. And it's a shame, because the movie is phenomenally acted, incredible score, great highs and lows. Like, it's, again, performances are top notch, top to bottom, and it's literally an experience. It's like you're getting sucked into this, like a drug state, like you're just a hypnotic state of getting sucked into these stories and how they kind of connect and how they interweave with each other, but then not going exactly the way you think, because life doesn't go the way you think. And, randomness disguised as coincidence, is what life is kind of all about. And when people talk about masterpieces that are made by directors, nobody talks about Magnolia. They always talk about There Will Be Blood. And they even talk about, they talk about Punch Drunk Love, because it is the one everybody thinks about when you think about good Adam Sandler movies, which is why it's perfectly rated.
And time. All right, Henry, back to you.
So I want to refute the fact that when you said people talk about Adam Sandler, they talk about Punch Drunk Love. That's just not true. And I get what you're going for because it is a great performance. So it's easy to incept that in the minds of the judges when you say that because they're like, oh yeah, that is good. But it's not true. When you think of Adam Sandler, you think of his comedies, his goofiness, his silliness. People are not bringing up Punch Drunk Love. When you talk about Paul Thomas Anderson, they're not talking about Punch Drunk Love. I love that you keep talking about all the accolades and all the fantasticness that you're getting from Magnolia because it's true. It was nominated for 3 Oscars and it made a decent amount of money and it's highly rated on Rotten Tomatoes. That's not the end all be all of these arguments, but when you have the concept of underrated, you wouldn't have all those things. My movie was not nominated at all, but yet you just are continuously admitting that it's great. My movie didn't make much money, but you're continuously saying it's great, and that's the definition of underrated. It fits the criteria of being a good movie, but undervalued and under talked about. And with Uncut Gems that just came out, people are like, oh yeah, Adam Sandler was in something else. Punch Drunk Love because of his greatness. And the fact that it didn't have a resurgence, even though that he was out here with Uncut Gems, shows the case that it's like, oh, it's just super forgotten. It's one of those movies when you think of it, you think of it as sappy romance. I mean, just look at the poster itself. It's them kissing, and doing the little thing. It looks cheesy and people don't give it a chance. And like you said, people talk about your movie for better or for worse. With the frogs, people talk about it. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that it is not underrated and it is not under discussed. And let's just be honest, it's not even good. You know what I mean? So the fact that your movie, is talked about and not as good as my movie, and my movie is not talked about at all and way better, it just shows that it's just a better part of Paul Thomas Anderson's filmography, but it's also very unfortunate that people aren't discussing it. It should have been nominated. Adam Sandler should have been nominated in the movie. It should have had a screenplay nomination. Your movie, like I said, it was nominated. So it just doesn't fit the criteria for underrated. But also, if we're talking just movie for movie, my movie is better. Your movie is not good. It is 3 hours long. It has Julianne Moore overacting like crazy. She is super hysterical and it's super cheesy and it's over the top. You have Tom Cruise being very misogynistic and gross. You have a potential child rape thing with Philip Baker Hall that you were just talking about with his daughter, that it's one of those that's super creepy. You have John C. Reilly being super awkward and weird and not interacting. You don't care about any of the characters. Like you said, it's super random and stupid. My movie, you have a core relationship that reminds you that there is hope and you can find love one day.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the 4-minute open round. The time will start when the first person speaks.
So is my movie bad or good? Because you said both. So, I mean, I don't really understand the argument about Magnolia when you said it's great because the critics say it's great, but it's bad because it's bad. Our movies have almost the same, not that I give a shit about Rotten Tomatoes, but our movies have almost the same. It's 83, 79. It's like literally almost the same. That to me, that doesn't even matter. My point is when you weren't listening to me, because when I said Adam Sandler, when I said good Adam Sandler movies, specifically, that's what I said. People think of Punch Drunk Love, again, up until Uncut Gems. That's what I said.
So, like I said, what I'm bringing up is the fact. I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying that it's revered, it's well known because of its box office, its Oscar nomination, and its Rotten Tomato scores. But if you really look at it, it's not really a good movie. So it contradicts itself in that regard, where it's not underrated because people have talked about it and it is recognized back in the day. But it's also, when you go back and look at it, it's not good. So when you think of an underrated thing, you want to go back and revisit something or visit something for the very first time and be surprised and love.
Yeah, I was. I went back and revisited it, and I was surprised at how great it was. And I was, again, a movie can be talked about at the time and have all kinds of accolades. Crash had accolades at the time, and nobody talks about it. That's why you can go back and maybe reevaluate it as underrated, because if people have forgotten about it and don't talk about it anymore, that's why it's underrated. People still talk about There Will Be Blood. People still talk about The Master. People still talk about your movie. Again, that's my point, is people perfectly rate, like when you think about a great Adam Sandler movie or a great Paul Thomas Anderson movie, one of the things they bring up is Punch Drunk Love. That's why it's perfectly rated as a really good movie. It's not underrated. It's perfectly rated. That's my point.
So you say that when people say a good performance, then you're really narrowing down your selection. But when you're thinking of just generally what is a good movie, people are not discussing Punch Drunk Love. People are talking about Magnolia because
because nobody talks about anything else from that movie, because the rest of the movie is anything that's not Adam Sandler in that movie is perfectly average. And the love story is kind of just thrown in there. You don't understand why they're together. You don't understand the writing of why this romance, it just doesn't work. It's got more anxiety than in Uncut Gems when I rewatched it. I was riddling with anxiety. It's not a pleasant watch, and it's not a perfectly good romance. Like, it's very hard to watch. And
I'm glad you just said
that's the only
that.
thing that people talk about.
I'm glad you just said that, because like I said in the definition of what Punch Drunk Love is, it does a fantastic job of actually culminating its story in its entirety. Your movie is complete randomness where nothing comes together, and when you actually get to the end of your 3-hour journey, my movie is just over 90 minutes. Yours is 3 hours and you get nothing by the end. You're left cold. You don't have any fun. Like I said, you have a lot of overacting. You have some craziness. You have long sequence with the song where it's just cutting back and forth and you're not caring about any of them. Like you said, my movie is the crux is Adam Sandler, but guess what?
My movie's 3 hours because it dives into every single character, and it's all about the characters interweaving and coming together. It's like Pulp Fiction. Like, that's like saying, oh, Pulp Fiction is so scattered, it's a mess. Like that's the point, is that life is chaos. Like, life is scattered and crazy, and that there are things that come together that are not always coincidence. That's the point of the film, is that my film starts off as scattered and comes together, but then takes another swerve, because that's what life does. Life takes swerves. That's the whole point of the film. You missed the entire point of the film, but that's what it is.
Yeah, and like I said, it leaves you cold by the end. You don't have any connection to any character. You don't care. My movie, the definition of Punch Drunk Love is the anxiety. It is the awkwardness. It is the extremeness. Barry Egan, he is super awkward because of his sisters treat him bad. They call him gay boy. Like, they're very derogatory towards him. So, of course, he's not going to have the great relationship with women. So we finally find someone who gives him a chance. He has a few exploding things. He does the thing where he tears up the bathroom. They have a weird sexual thing where he's like, I want to smash your eyes out. And guess what? She goes with that because they have a connection. Yes, you don't understand it, but the two characters, they vibe and they connect. And that is what the definition of Punch Drunk Love is. Your movie, by the end of the movie, you don't care about anybody. It's just a bunch of overacting stuff, nonsense that doesn't come together. I love how you bring Pulp Fiction, but at the core of the movie, you have central characters. This one, you don't have any central characters that you care about.
You absolutely have a central character. You have Tom Cruise, which he was nominated for an Oscar. He's fantastic in this movie. All my characters are great in this movie. Like, overacting, like the Oscars didn't think so.
All right, we are going to go on to the final minute. Austin, you're up first. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Again, Henry is touting how great his movie is when you go and watch it. That's the point. That everybody knows how good Punch Drunk Love is. Like, it's a perfectly good movie. I don't think it's an absolutely great movie, but again, when I think of underrated, this is what I talked about in my playoff with Mission Impossible. Nobody thinks Mission Impossible is like a bad movie. My point of underrated is undervalued or not appreciated enough. And when you think, especially before Uncut Gems, when you talked about even people who hadn't seen it, what's a great Adam Sandler movie or Paul Thomas Anderson movie for that? Punch Drunk Love is one of the first things people bring up, and it's right there, like, kind of near the top. To me, that's not underrated. That's perfectly rated. Like, I bet a lot of people didn't even know what Magnolia was coming back to it, or didn't even know this movie existed. Like, yes, a movie can exist in a period in a year that it came out, and you talk about box office, it barely made its budget back. Like, not a lot of people saw this movie, which is why it's a perfect candidate for underrated to go back and dive into his filmography coming off of Boogie Nights. Like, that's why you go back and see a fantastic, epic experience of a film like Magnolia. It's a revelation when you go back to it.
Time. All right, Henry, last minute. Time starts when you speak.
All right, so just to reiterate, you said underrated is underappreciated and undervalued. Your movie is perfectly appreciated. It is 83% critic score, but it also has 89 audience score. People talk about it. People know it. You said it did make its budget back, but it spent $37 million and it made $48 million. Sure, that's barely, but in comparison to my movie where it spent $25 million and it only made $24 million, it didn't make its budget back. And it only has a 79% critic score and a 77 audience score. So it is underrated. And now if we're comparing, so I already just got it where it's the fact that it's under talked about it. Now we're talking about undervalued. My movie, when you actually watch the film and you actually fall in love with the characters and their awkwardness and the punch drunk loveness of it, you really appreciate what Paul Thomas Anderson is doing with the movie. When you go back to your movie and you actually study it and you actually pay attention, it takes you a long time to get to that emotional scene that you're talking about with Tom Cruise. But at the end, you don't care because he's an asshole. His dad's an asshole. They don't have that connection with each other. It's cheap crying, just like in dog dying movies. You have Julianne Moore overacting and crying the entire time, and you have the weirdness of the frogs. People talk about it, sure, but it's also bad. It's not a good movie.
And great. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and send both of you back. and bring forth our judges. So since there were a lot more numbers brought up this round, I do have a couple of quick fact checks. In terms of the Rotten Tomatoes score, Punch Drunk Love has a 79% critic-like rating, a 77% audience-like rating. Magnolia does have an 83% critic-like rating with an 89% audience rating. So in terms of them saying that the two scores are very close together, they are within 5% of each other in terms of critics. So that's individual people making the difference. In terms of their runtime, Magnolia is over 3 hours long at 3 hours and 8 minutes. Punch Drunk Love is a cool 95 minutes or an hour 35. And then in terms of box office, so yes, on base paper, when you look at the aggregator like Box Office Mojo, from the get-go, Punch Drunk Love did lose money at the box office, just base numbers. Magnolia on paper did make money. However, when you do math to account for marketing budget being added to production budget, as well as theater takeout being taken out of its revenue, it also lost its studio money, just probably less money than Punch Drunk Love did. So neither were really a success at the box office, if we're going to count that. But it's not off of that. It is off of the points made in the match. Sean, I go to you first. Who gets your vote and what soldier?
Aaron loves these underrated questions. Very tough round. Lots of opinions and strong arguments. Yeah, this one was tough for me. I'm gonna have to go with Austin. I agreed with him a lot more in a lot of the points he made. And yeah, I think it is underrated.
All right, Haven, I go to you next. Who gets your vote and what soldier?
Yeah, I don't know why they keep bringing up numbers. I mean, that's not going to sway anybody because you look up a stat, for a number of what the movie might do. I'm going to have to go with Austin again because Henry said that sucks, and this is one of my top 10 favorite movies of the time. I love this movie. Austin brought up the frogs. He brought up the only thing he didn't bring up was William H. Macy getting the braces, trying to rob the store, frog smashing in the mouth, when he fell. Memorable scene. But everything connected in that movie. It's a great character study. I'm going with Austin on this one. Punch Drunk Love fucking sucks.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and send our judges to the back and bring in our competitors.
Thank God we actually judge and we don't bring personal opinions into it. All right. Jesus Christ. What the fuck was that?
And we're going to go ahead and move on to question number 4 here. And this question...
people actually listen to the arguments with this one instead of bringing personal opinions.
This is what's known as a replay question in Movie Battleground. This means it was a question that was asked in a previous match in a certain context, and we have decided to bring it back for another go at it. The question on the table today is, what is the worst MCU film? Now, this question previously appeared in the match between Abel DeLu and Shannon Briggs. It was a blind round question presented to them, and their answers given were Thor Ragnarok and Avengers Endgame. Again, that is off the generalization of name an MCU film. And so because generally speaking, 2 better liked MCU films were listed, we thought we'd bring it back, give it to 2 competitors, and let it have a proper debate where they could actually pick films that they didn't like and have a go at it. And these 2 are here to present that today. With that said, Henry, I go to you first on this one. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
All right. Well, with this one, hopefully we actually see the question of what is the worst and not the judge's least favorite, because I chose Thor: Dark World. And the reason I chose this movie as the worst MCU film is because you just don't care. The MCU is one of the most popular and well-known franchises, cinematic universes, IPs, whatever that you want to say of all time. And Thor: Dark World is the worst of the bunch because it just brings nothing to the table. Sure, you have a little bit of good chemistry and well acting from Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston, but guess what? At this point, this is their 3rd chance to do this, so they can't really screw it up. So when you go to this movie, what do you want that's new? Or what do you want that just stands out? You want the relationship between Thor and Jane Foster? Blah, don't care. No chemistry. Natalie Portman is just sleepwalking through the entire thing, clearly, because she didn't come back later. She might come back in the future, who knows? But at this point up to now, she didn't come back for a reason, because she just didn't care. She wasn't invested. You have Malekith. Oh my God. the worst villain of the entire MCU. He's terrible. He's not even in the movie that much. He doesn't do anything. He's not memorable. You don't even remember the actor doing it because you just don't care.
Austin, back to you. Time starts when you speak.
I picked a movie that a lot of people forget even came out during phase 1 of the MCU, and I went with Iron Man 2. And the reason I went with Iron Man 2 is that here's a movie where 2 years after the first Iron Man, going from 2008 to 2010, you have the exact same crew, almost the exact same cast, obviously other than Don Cheadle getting recasted, but you've got Jon Favreau, you've got you got Robert Downey Jr., you've got many of the same writers, but it's a movie that's completely broken because it's completely rushed, and it's literally almost like a 2-hour montage of a mess. You have a movie that was filmed without a completed script, and it feels like that. A movie that was literally still in development as it was being filmed, which is never a good idea for a movie. So I went with Iron Man 2. It's a movie that the crew itself, looking back on the movie, dislikes. It's a movie that Favreau admits in the behind-the-scenes features of the actual Blu-ray that it is rushed and feels broken. Yeah, I'm going with Iron Man 2.
All right. Generally speaking, I'd say people say these are the two worst. So, we hit the nail on the head the second time around. Henry, back to you for 2 minutes.
Similar to the first question, I actually had to do a discount double check on the question because it said worst MCU movie. And when I saw you pick Iron Man 2, I thought maybe you were pitching the most underrated because when you see Iron Man 2, what do you get in Iron Man 2? You get Robert Downey Jr. doing Robert Downey Jr.'s amazing performance as Tony Stark with his great chemistry with all his co-stars. You have, guess what? The introduction of Black Widow. And what did you want after you saw Black Widow and Iron Man 2? You wanted a Black Widow solo movie for a reason because she is fantastic in this movie, and she really set up that character off the rip. And like I said, he has a missing chemistry. You would think that him and Rhodey would have chemistry by now. The second movie, guess what? Recasted Don Cheadle, like you said, and they have amazing chemistry. And guess what? Don Cheadle continued that chemistry from Iron Man 2 and stayed in the franchise because he did an amazing job. You have Whiplash, who people might say is underwhelming and not a great villain, but guess what? That is the issue with the entire Iron Man series. And honestly, spoiler alert, for the entire MCU. So you can't knock this one individual movie for a lackluster villain. Whereas in my movie, you have a straight bad villain. He's not in the movie that often. In your movie, you have the combination of Justin Hammer and Whiplash. Everything that Whiplash does is awesome. And Justin Hammer is very smart. Guess what? He did Baron Zemo before Baron Zemo did it. You know what I mean? He really set up all that what is going on. In my movie, Malekith, he doesn't do anything. He has a weird voice choice that is like this ominous deepness, and he only says like 10 lines the entire movie. Don't fact check, that's just a crazy word I just said, but he only has a few lines the entire movie, and you just don't care. You have the relationship between Loki and Thor, but guess what? After the first 2 minutes, Loki's not in it for another half hour, so you just wasted all that potential that you could have had in the amazing chemistry. Whereas in Iron Man 2, you have Robert Downey Jr. just beat for beat for beat doing everything that you love from the Iron Man character. You have the tragedy of what he's dealing with physically with in his chest and what happened, the repercussions of how he's really going down in health, and you're panicking, you're worried, you really think that he's going to go down. They continue that in Iron Man 3, and that's why as a whole the Iron Man trilogy is pretty good, because this one cements what we get the entire time.
All right, Austin, you're back up.
My movie feels rushed, and it shows that it's rushed when you're literally watching the movie and it just jumps. There's cuts about every 2 minutes. It jumps and jumps and jumps. It's got so many things going on. It feels like a Cliff Note film, because it was a Cliff Note film. They were running without an actual script, making up dialogue on the spot, making up dialogue the day before. It's a movie that has way too many plot lines going on, way too many villains, way too many side characters, trying to juggle about 80 different things, because it's literally a pitch for Avengers that you have. It's funny you mentioned Black Widow. She has no she's incidental to the plot. She's literally shoved in there because we have to get her in there before the Avengers, much like they shoved Hawkeye in a reshoot into Thor, because we got to get him on camera before Avengers. We can't possibly have Black Widow just have that amazing opening scene she has in Avengers and get everything you need to know out of that character in that scene. No, we got to shove her in this movie tasing people, whatever. When movie has no dramatic moments. It's funny you mentioned the chemistry between him and Don Cheadle, because they have exactly one dramatic scene together that lasts about 60 seconds. Mickey Rourke and Justin Hammer's characters, you could literally combine them into two. You don't need both of them. This movie is amazing. It killed Mickey Rourke's comeback. He was hot off The Wrestler, and it killed his comeback, and now he's doing Redbox movies. I mean, this movie, what do you think of when you think about Mickey Rourke's character in this movie? I want my board. It's a complete joke. It's an absolute joke. Yeah, I don't remember anything about Malekith. He's another forgettable MCU villain. So what? Whatever. My movie, you remember him, but for all the wrong reasons. And, you know, it has a plot line about Tony Stark potentially dying from this thing in his heart that's completely solved incidentally by Nick Fury just showing up, injecting him into something. Boom, problem solved. Didn't care about that storyline. I guess we forgot to write that part into the script. And then you have Nick Fury come in and deliver literally about 8 minutes of exposition on Tony Stark's patio, because we have to keep the story moving along. It's a whole bunch of good ideas smashed together. Not a single one of them is fleshed out, because, again, the movie was basically still in development while they were trying to film it. It's a movie Jon Favreau even admits is not where it needs to be.
All right, and that is time. We're going to go on to the 4-minute open debate. Starting the first person speaks.
All right, so pretty much everything that you're describing with Iron Man 2 is not the worst MCU movie, but potentially the worst use of potential. So it's not the worst in the franchise. You talked about how Black Widow is incidental to the plot. She literally infiltrates his staff. She's his assistant for the first half of the movie until she switches over and like, ooh, I'm Black Widow and I'm awesome. She's in the entire movie. She's integral to the plot. She
You
does
don't need
everything.
her. How is she integral to the plot? How? Please explain that. You could take her out of the movie, and the movie would be exactly the same. Literally, the movie would be no different. It'd be 5 minutes shorter.
She's literally able to set up and do spy stuff, but it's low key, because guess what? Sometimes you don't have to do the crazy spy stuff. When you think of your movie, you have Alexander Skarsgård just doing some crazy stuff in his underwear. You have Malekith that you don't care about. You have Jane Foster.
You mean your movie?
Ill. You have Darcy. Yeah, in my movie, you have Darcy being completely annoying. You have Thor, you know, not really doing anything cool. You have the Warriors 3. You have so much stuff that you just don't care about. You know what I mean? And like I said, in your movie, you have the amazing Black Widow scene. You have the chemistry between Tony Stark and Gwyneth Paltrow, which is the first time you really develop their love, and it's beautiful to see. And you said that him and Rhodey don't have that scene. They have a long action scene where they're fighting, and it's the introduction of the War Machine. You have so much that goes on to Iron Man 2. It's awesome. It's not the worst. It's actually underrated, and it's really good.
Your movie, it's funny you should mention low key, because your movie has one of the favorite characters of the MCU movie, Loki, giving an incredible performance and a really nuanced performance from Tom Hiddleston, going through stages of grief when his mother dies. There's actual stakes in your movie. You don't feel like Tony's going anywhere in my movie, or anybody for that matter. You have the incredible chemistry that we would see later in Thor Ragnarok in your movie. Like it's with the two brothers planning out how they're going to approach, you know, some kind of action beat, how they're going to approach some kind of heist. You get all this stuff that people would later come to love in Thor Ragnarok. A lot of that stuff is kind of prototyped in Thor the Dark World, which makes it interesting. I mean, your movie looks good, but to me, it's like, you know, your movie's like perfectly mediocre, which is fine. It doesn't make it the worst. Like my movie, it's such a fall from Iron Man to Iron Man 2. That's kind of why it's the worst for me.
So, yeah, see, you just said for you personally, because that's a personal thing you're projecting. When you actually think of the storyline, yeah, sure, it didn't meet your expectation. That's just like saying The Godfather 3 is the worst movie of all time because it didn't live up to Godfather 1 and 2. Just because it didn't live up to the one right before it doesn't mean it's terrible. Your movie had 3 opportunities before it, or 2 opportunities before it in Thor and the Avengers to build the Thor and the Loki characters. So, like I said at the beginning, of course they're going to be good. They're good actors, and they're well-developed characters. Not from this movie, but just from their characters beforehand. everything that you get in this movie is stale. When Frigga's death, after it dies, you don't care as an audience, and it's just kind of brushed away. You have the one scene where he snaps and he's sad, but it's like
I may not care, like personally, but Tom Hiddleston's character cares, and he gives it some stakes in that movie and a dynamic that you get to see out of Loki. You feel sympathetic for this guy, and you actually have some stakes in your movie, which makes it interesting. Mine completely throws away any kind of hint that anybody wouldn't make it out of my movie by just throwing in a plot contrivance of Nick Fury coming in to save the day in a donut diner. It's literally a movie that they kind of admit was reshot and just thrown in to solve a problem. I mean, my movie is a complete betrayal of the character of Tony Stark. He goes from being this kind of humble guy near the end of the movie to back to being an arrogant asshole rock star at the beginning of mine. He's learned nothing. It's like they're starting over from the beginning of the first Iron Man.
See, that's extremely false. In Iron Man 2, he's developing his sickness. He literally asked someone a question, a hypothetical, and he's like, if you knew that tomorrow was going to be your last day, he asked Natalie, if you knew that tomorrow was going to be your last day, what would you do for his birthday party? And she says, live it up with everybody and do whatever I want. Because it's at that point where he's desperate. He's, it's to a point where you see a side of him that is scary. You don't know exactly what you're going to get for the future. And obviously it's a franchise movie, whatever. You're not going to, he's a main character. But in your movie in my movie with Frigga's death, you just don't care because it happens 3/4 into the movie, but then it has the entire third act after the fact that you don't remember anything from that third act, and it undercuts that death that you just it ruins the entire thing, and you don't have that overall moment. You don't even have Odin's reaction to it. There's so much stuff that is wasted, whereas in Iron Man 2 there's so much fun. Like I said, it's the Black Widow character that's introduced, and when you talk about your movie, you hear about that Black Widow thing, and
the Black Widow with 5 minutes of screen time that is incidental to the plot. You keep going back to Black Widow,
Natalie's
which has she's standing there with a clipboard. That doesn't make her essential
because she's a spy. She's infiltrating. She's doing research.
Yeah, you can get all that from the beginning of the Avengers. You can get all of that from that.
All right, we're gonna go on to our closings. Henry, you have your last minute on the dock.
Okay, so I just want to reiterate the question is, what is the worst film? Not as what is your least favorite. So judges, I want you to take a second and close your eyes and think about the two films and see. Obviously, you can't say it out loud, so it's kind of just one of these that's deep down your mind. Think about a scene from either movie and see if anything comes to mind. Okay, you thought about it. In Iron Man 2, you have, even if it's a joke, you have the donut scene. You have the scene where you come down for the donut. Like I said, you have the Natalia, the Black Widow fighting scene that introduces that character to be amazing. And at that point, we want a Black Widow solo film. In Thor Dark World, you don't think of a single thing. You don't care. It is so boring and forgettable. You said mine's beautiful to look at, but guess what? It's super dark. If you can see anything, it might look decent, but that's it. And it's all CG, so it's computer. It's not really doing anything. Your movie, it introduces War Machine. You said, yeah, it has a lot of characters, but you're talking about the memes of Whiplash. The actual whiplashing scenes are fantastic. When he's chopping up cars, exactly. When you think of Iron Man 2, you think of the Monaco scene. That is an amazing introduction to a character that maybe have wasted him by the end and you didn't get your expectations, but that scene itself is amazing. So there's no way that you can say yours is the worst when there's a lot of greatness in it.
Time. All right, Austin, you have the last minute. Time starts.
When you go from the highs of Iron Man up here, which many consider one of the top films in the MCU, one of the best origin stories of all time, with Jon Favreau at the helm, to way down here, and I'm kind of reaching towards my feet, with Iron Man 2, a movie that people not only forget, but pretty much ignore in the MCU, and also forget even came out in Phase 1. To me, that's what makes it the worst. When you go from Thor, which is like a kind of middling, nice little fish out of water story, a few good moments, a few bad moments, to kind of just a little bit below, just a little bit more mediocre, with still some highs, still some lows. To me, there's not much of a drop there. So your expectations are different when going into Thor 2, versus Iron Man 2. Your expectations are up here for one and kind of right here for another one, which is why the fall is not as big, which is what makes it the worst. Thor Dark World is fine. It's got stuff that we would see later in Thor Ragnarok, prototyped in this movie. Still some good stuff, good chemistry between the characters. It's perfectly mediocre, but mine, when you go from a masterpiece to a mediocre film, that's a huge fall.
And time. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and send you back after another good debate, and I'm going to bring in our three judges. Just a couple quick small fact checks, not very much there. First off, despite the protest, I did attempt to research exactly how many lines Malekith had in Thor the Dark World. The answer was inconclusive because I don't think anybody's ever actually tried to do this. The second thing is there was a brief slip of the tongue that somebody may have caught earlier. If Alexander Skarsgård was the one running around in his underwear, I think all the women and some gay men may have enjoyed it. Stellan Skarsgård is the Skarsgård member that plays Eric Selvig. But again, that's small minor fraction details. But with that said, I am going to go to our judges. Haven, I head to you first. Based on the arguments, who sold you and what was the main point that did it?
Who sold me on this one? I'm gonna have to go with Henry on this one. He had a better argument for Thor: Dark World. You know, he made a lot of interesting points about Iron Man 2, about Black Widow being brought into the movie, how she played a great role moving forward in the universe, how when they switched Rhodey's, you know, Rhodey became an integral part of the movies, how he became an Avenger, you know. So, yeah, I'm going to have to give it to Henry with Thor: The Dark World.
All right, so the first vote does go to Henry. Will, I go to you. Who does your vote go to and what sold you?
Okay, so while I have very strong opinions about both of these films, I also went with Henry for the sole reason that his points I just felt were a little bit better, and I just absolutely loved the observation that Justin Hammer was Baron Zemo before Baron Zemo. That was something I'd never thought of before, and that just chef's kiss, wonderful point.
All right. Well, judges, thank you so much for your contributions tonight. I'm going to go ahead and send you guys to the back because. And your winner by a final score of 3-1, Henry Confidential Sanchez coming out with the victory. So, keeping my own biases in for about 30 seconds, I do want to say thank you. You gave me some retribution. That was nice to watch. Taking it back to a professional level, though, as was said at the start, obviously, if we're going to give a second chance to somebody, Shannon was number one because he not only had his opponent get flipped, but he also played very well for a loss against him. Austin met that caliber next in terms of the play, so I gave it to him. Austin beat Shannon for the behind the scenes of it a little bit. Shannon was offered this match. I offered to just straight up scrub that one question they played and allow Shannon to play. But because there had been a couple extra days that had passed in between the playoff and then us realizing we needed another opponent anyways, he felt it was out of his range to be prepared in time. And so that's when I reached out to Henry to take part in this. So with all that said, you do have a second entrance back into the tournament in the 0-1 bracket. How are you feeling?
That was a battle. I mean, I can't wait to like hear what people say about it because, you know, at this point, you know, I don't know Austin. I haven't known Austin that long, but he's become like a really good friend of mine at this point. Like, I feel like our chemistry is really good. And like, you know, we did some behind the scenes stuff. If you're familiar with Battleground, you know, there's a little bit of time between, you know, then and now, and we were able to talk and like no bad blood. We had a lot of fun. This was great. You know me, I love debating. I love to just talk film in general over at the Confidential Roundtable, where it's just talk about film and express the love of it. You know what I mean? So the fact that, you know, we were able to just put out a good show, and I'm hoping that people love it, and you know, it didn't take that long. So hopefully, you know, a lot of people see it, and we go on to be superstars in the world and get paid a lot of money. No, I'm just kidding. We had a lot of fun, and I'm glad that you know, we lived up mostly to what you expected.
Absolutely. And continuing into the tournament, your next opponent will be Kevin Moreno, who to kind of go over his track record. His first match was against Jeremy as a debuting rookie. That did not end too brightly for him in a knockout. But he came back against Steve Mesa, and I think considering Steve's first performance against Evan, I think he kind of shocked the world a bit and gave a very convincing performance to take him down. How are you feeling going into that?
Anytime, any place with anybody, you know what I mean? Movie Battleground. It's not like trivia where it's the luck of the draw of the questions. It's all about, your prep. Like, you can get the worst questions of all time, and as long as you didn't have a match before that, you wasted an hour and a month and a half, and then the next ones you don't like them as much. For the most part, regardless of the questions, you know what I mean? It's about, your ability to speak, come up with arguments, come up with points, and just have the confidence. So, any place, anytime. Obviously you want to save the ones like me and Austin for the later rounds because you want them to be on championship level, but unfortunately it's not always the case. So anybody who comes my way, Kevin, good luck to you, and I'm excited to see what we bring to the table next.
All right. Well, I look forward to having you back, sir. We will see you then, as I go ahead and bring in his opponent, Austin Pez Howell. And I want to start off by saying you did a great job tonight, sir. A very, very good, well-fought match, as we saw a lot of split decisions down the middle. How are you feeling following that?
I'm feeling fine. Henry is a top caliber veteran opponent. And if I'm going to come in here as a rookie and give him a fight for his life and put him on the ropes, especially in the second half, and mount a comeback and damn near take it to the blind round, I'm perfectly fine with that. If I'm going to lose, I don't mind losing as long as my opponent is bringing it as well. So yeah, I have no problems with that. If I was going to look, Henry and I have been on a collision course ever since I entered the battleground. He entered the battleground. We've been on a collision course. We would have done this regardless of whether it was in a tournament, whether it was in an exhibition, whether it was on his show, The War Room. And you damn near believe we're coming for round two, and we're gonna have a round two, and we're gonna have probably many more rounds after that in the years and years to come. Because I think every time we get in the battleground, we're gonna have a match of the year candidate, and I hope that people agree with that tonight. I think we had a hell of a match. I think it's a hell of an entertaining match. We both have giant personalities, and I think that's what people want, is they want entertainment value, and I think you got it with me and Henry.
Absolutely. It was a good game in that. And so obviously with the record of 1 win, 2 defeats, you are out of the tournament for the moment, unfortunately, but there will be opponents for the picking once we return in the post. And I want to take a minute before I kick you out of here. You got one up on me. I got one up on you. We can end this
Fair
right
enough.
now and call it even, or you can keep bitching about things that are out of my control.
No, fair enough. I don't mind. Again, I don't mind Henry. Henry as a surprise opponent, I'm perfectly happy about, because he's a guy I've been wanting to fight, and I've asked you behind the scenes that I could get here in the battleground, just as a matter of bringing a freaking great match. So the fact that we had a great match is exactly what I wanted. So to go out of the tournament facing somebody like Henry, I'm perfectly fine and content with that, and I'm perfectly fine and content with you for giving me that.
All right. Austin, it'll be a little while, but we will see you sooner than later.
Oh, you'll see me again. I think I've made enough of an impact on the battleground that people are going to want to see me again, and not too far in the distant future.
All right. Well, we will see you, sir. See you next time on the battleground. And guys, with that, that is the final match of the tournament, or at least the round of 16 of the tournament, with Henry Sanchez progressing through to the next round in that second chance slot. Now, for those of you who have been kind of keeping score and keeping count, paying attention when I post the bracket updates for those who entered for that little competition, you may be picking up on the fact that there is actually still one match missing, and that is between Tyler Birch and Evan DeGraff. And the simple answer to that question is that match is no longer happening. There is a more complex explanation as to what exactly happened, which will be given to you guys on Saturday. In place of that match going up on Saturday, we are going to be having kind of a special video. I have gathered a couple of members of the Battleground community, including Mr. Howell, and we recorded a kind of a discussion video breaking down some of the matches and some of the matchups that are to come. So it was a fun little video, and the explanation as to what happened with that last match and what is going on with the tournament will be given there. But it's been fun so far, and I know we have more fun in the future. In terms of actual matches, what is to come, we only have one more regular season match for the year, and that is the honorary champ Joe Fairley will take on Chadwick Webb in the quarterfinals of the tournament to progress to the semifinals. finals. After that, every match that airs in 2021 will be an exhibition match. We have the Christmas exhibition match, we have the Wizarding World exhibition match, and we have the 2021 in film exhibition match, all happening before the end of the year. And we will resume uploads in the first week of the new year. And we'll also have a gangbuster of a match then between Jay Burns and Amaru Moses. So it is a hell of a lineup coming in the next couple of weeks. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for sticking with us in the future. On behalf of my judges tonight, Haven, Pendergast, Will Cohen, and Sean Hunter, on behalf of my great competitors, Austin Howell and Henry Confidential, on behalf of my producers behind the scenes who help put the show together and make it what it is, my name is Aaron Knoll, and we will see you next time on the Movie Battleground. Take care, everybody.